The message of the gospel is hope. H-O-P-E. Having optimistic and powerful expectations. Amen? That God not only does something great, but He's going to do something even greater. And that's what the Annie Armstrong offering this year is about, sending hope. And the way that we send hope is, of course, by taking the gospel to the very ends of the earth. And we have the privilege as Southern Baptists each year to take up 3 offerings that go toward specifically missions work, 100% into their hands. We have the McGuire State Missions Offering, which comes to missionaries within the state of Florida, which, as we've said, Florida is a huge and diverse mission field. We actually now have a brand new partnership in Florida with the North American Mission Board. So some of the things that you're going to hear tonight, as we're talking about monies, that this offering will go into the North American Mission Board, a lot of these monies are actually kicking back to the state of Florida as part of the Send Florida emphasis that we're doing. There are only 2 states in the country that have an emphasis like that. And I am so blessed, and we are so blessed to be Floridians, that we have one. It is a huge deal, because what it means is that Florida now has not only the purse, if you will, of the North American Mission Board to work with, but we also have the resources of the North American Mission Board, which is huge, because what one state can do, and then compared to what 50 states can do, if we take the North American Mission Board and all the resources that they have, particularly in how they screen missionaries. And what I mean by that is one of the big strategies, especially in Florida, is planting churches. Planting churches particularly in the Tri-County corridor of South Florida that we've been really emphasizing for the last 2 years. We have seen a great growth in the church down in the southern part of the state. Matter of fact, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Worship south of Ocala in the state of Florida looks 180 different from what it does north of Ocala. The way they do church down there is almost New Testament in so many ways. It is absolutely amazing, because what we're seeing are language churches every week coming online, because we have so many languages moving into Florida. That Florida, as a state, is the most diverse mission field in the country. So the North American Mission Board has said, well, listen, let us share some of the purse. I'm like Brother Tom, my name's Jimmy, I'll take what you give me. Give some of the purse, but also the resources, so they can help church planters. Dr. Kevin Esel, who's the president of the North American Mission Board, put it this way. He says, we want to be planting quality church plants, not just about quantity. And I was so glad to hear that, because what that tends to happen is all these young preachers, everybody wants to plant a church. But after about a year or 2 years, what we have seen is a lot of those plants have disappeared. What we're doing now is we will have tools in place to help us not only initially equip church planters, but be able to train them better. That when they start a plant, it's a better quality plant, if you understand what I'm saying. It'll be more rooted, it'll have a little bit more financial backing to it so that they can get their feet wet. Because I'm going to tell you right now, ministry takes money. If you don't think ministry takes money, go talk to Pauline. She paid the bills just on Thursday. Ministry definitely takes money. And so it allows these missionaries to have those resources. It also allows our missionaries in Florida to have easy access to the North American Mission Board. If they have questions about a particular people group, or if they want to do a language training, or they want to do some kind of cultural impact party or outreach event in that particular area with a people group or a language, we have a lot more resources through the North American Mission Board to be able to do that. So, tremendously excited. As a matter of fact, that's probably one of the biggest news things that came out of the State Board of Missions. And because I sit on the State Board of Missions, you're one of the first to hear about it. Most people in the state of Florida don't even know that partnership exists yet, because it hasn't been really publicly advertised yet. So you guys get hot off the press. But But Daniel can tell you, he was there with me. He was my guest. I had him go with, he went with me and had a great time. He got to see what I was telling him. He got to see the man behind the curtain pulling all the levers, and it was really kind of cool to do that. And to be able to see Dr. Kevin Ezel, we talked to him through telechat, and man, I'll tell you, it's just great. So this year, when we talk about the Armstrong Easter Fund, I'm a little selfish, I guess, because not only is it helping missionaries around the United States, but it is helping missionaries right here in Florida to a much broader degree than it did just 4 weeks ago. So that's pretty exciting stuff. The goal this year for the Armstrong offering is $70 million. Woo! That's a lot of money, ain't it? $70 million. But I'm encouraged because we have seen giving across the cooperative program at a good stable rate. We haven't seen huge surges in it. We haven't seen huge dips in it, but it's been a real stable rate. So we're hoping that Annie Armstrong will be able to come through easily with the $70 million. Because there's the McGuire State, there's the Annie Armstrong Easter offering, that goes to North American Missions. And of course the Lottie Moon Christmas offering, that offering goes to the International Mission Board. And then every month you give to the cooperative program. Every month a check leaves this church and goes to the Florida Baptist Convention, of which the Florida Baptist Convention takes 49% of that, and then 51% of that goes to the Southern Baptist Convention to then support, again, missionaries in North America, missionaries around the world. So every time you give to these special offerings, and every time you tithe, a percentage of that tithe money is going to the cooperative program. So you are supporting missionaries right here in this church. Because my predecessor put it this way, and as long as I'm here, that's what it's going to be. If you stop giving to missions, you're done. So you cannot outgive God. And I see God richly pouring out blessing upon us. Earl's seen this. We've talked about the Finance Committee. When we see us giving to missions, we see God even blessing our church more. So you just can't outgive God. So I encourage you to pray as to how the Lord will lead you to give to this offering this year. And it's exciting. It's exciting stuff. Let me give you a little bit of a breakdown of how gifts are used. You might think, well, if I give $5, all I can give, Sean, is $5. Let me tell you what $5 will do. $5 will buy a bus voucher so that a missionary or a group of missionaries, a team, can go in and through a community. Because there are places in the country that you can't just hop in a vehicle and go drive to like we can here in Suwannee County. They have to take buses, or they have to be bused there. $5 is bus fare for travel in a local community. So if you say, all I can give is $5, praise God, you just allowed a missionary or their team to be mobilized in their community for a day. That's pretty cool, right? What about $25? What will $25 do? It provides a meal with an unreached person. It allows a missionary to take somebody to lunch and love on them over a hamburger and fries. And that's one of the things that we tell our missionaries. Love on these people. When you're planning churches and you're talking to people, take them out to a nice lunch. Take them out and sit across the table with them and hear their heart for ministry. So $25 buys a meal with an unreached person. What about $85? $85 allows our missionaries to subscribe to different training resources offered through the International Mission Board. So there's a Bible study software called Logos, which I use. I've gifted that to Daniel, and I've gifted it to Kevin as well, and they utilize my subscription. And so $85 helps put vital tools in the hands of a missionary. What about $100? $100 allows us to give a gift to a missionary couple. One of the things that we like to do in our state is provide our missionary couples with an anniversary gift. Just saying, we've been praying for you, we thank you, go out and have a steak dinner. And it's nice to do that for them because I'll tell you, sometimes in ministry you can feel lost and forgotten. Well, especially in the mission field, you can feel lost and forgotten. I'm sure we've got a lot of folks who can tell us about that. But this is just one way that we as a convention can stop and say, hey, we appreciate you and love what you do. $300 provides training and conference for a church planter's wife. Just as a pastor's wife is important, a church planter's wife is important. And we have a church planting wives conference each year. And so this allows us to have scholarships so that they're not having to pay that out of their pocket. What about $500? $500 allows a community-wide outreach event to be held. So a lot can be done with $500. You can reach in some parts of the state 4,000 to 5,000 people with one outreach event. We have seen it happen this year. That's tremendous, isn't it? Because guys, if you travel the state, if you go further south, you literally have 200,000 and 300,000 people within 3 and 4 miles of each other. I mean, they are stacked like cordwood. So what we do is we get these missionaries to go into a park, and they do an outreach and evangelistic program, and we see hundreds and thousands of people because it's such a concentrated area there. So that's $500. What can 1,000 do? $1,000 can provide emergency travel assistance for a missionary family. And this is important because all of these are talking about how we can help missionaries. And we have some missionaries that live in parts of say Washington State. And if there's an emergency and they need to get back home, say to Florida, they need airfare, and airfare is expensive. So it allows us that if they have a need, we can cut the check instantly. We can literally book the travel through the convention so that they don't skip a beat and they can get home or whatever. We've had missionary families that have had sick children they have had to take their children to different hospitals, and those funds help those missionaries with expenses like that. $1,200 pays for Bibles, gospel tracts, and discipleship materials. Because I can tell you those things are not cheap. So that allows our missionaries to have those resources in hand. And then $1,400, listen to this, $1,400 on average in the country will pay for worship facility rent. How much do you guys pay to rent? So you guys pay $550. So the average going rate across the country, and that's a Jasper, right? So the average going rate across the nation is $1,400. So this also allows them to be able to rent facilities, rent space with at least $1,400 a month. So those are just some of the ways that our gifts help individual missionaries. Not to mention then how much far beyond that it also puts these resources in the hand of unreached people. It allows us to do amazing things for them. The revenue from the North American Mission Board is supported. 49% of it comes from the Annie Armstrong Easter offering. 36% comes through the cooperative program. And then 15% comes through other revenue sources. And you may say, well, what are those? Well, those are many in name and form. We've got people who have left estates to the mission boards. They've left CDs. They've left stock funds, all kinds of things. There's millions of dollars that people have left to be used within the North American Mission Board that serve as revenue sources for them. Then the way it is allocated, 52% of the Annie Armstrong goes to missionary mobilization, 37% to church planting, and 11% to evangelism. So the deal is 100%, say it with me, 100% goes to the mission field. Not one penny of Annie Armstrong money goes to salaries, facilities other than helping pay rent, things like that, for worship facilities alone. It goes straight into the mission field. So when you give, if you say, hey, Pastor, I give $5, when you give that $5 to Annie Armstrong, every penny of that $5 is going to be used in the mission field somewhere. So that is cool to know. You're not paying overhead and you're not paying expenses and things like that in other places. So the goal this year is $70 million. Pray as the Lord would lead you to give. We're now going to watch 6. We're just going to watch them straight together. We're just going back. There are 6 missionaries that we're going to look at. We're going to look at Philip and Jemai. They serve in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're going to see a Chinese church planter, Jorge and Rebecca Santiago in Puerto Rico, Luis and Beatriz Soto in Salt Lake City, Utah, the Ukabu family in Miami, and the Warren family in Madison, Wisconsin. So these are great videos. So I hope you're blessed.
Right now, there is history being made. It starts with Chinese people, hundreds of thousands of them moving to our cities in search of the American dream. When they get here, they are curious, lonely, and lost. My name is Jeremy Sin. and I help Chinese believers starting Southern Baptist churches for these people. The believers and church planters I work with, their home country is communist and takes a strong stand on atheism. That's why we don't show you their faces or use their names, but you need to know their stories.
Chinese people really are cautious towards Christians and the church. That's a foreign thing to them.
This Chinese brother came to a major U.S. city to attend school. There he found himself surrounded by tens of thousands of other Chinese people. And when he discovered he was just about the only Christian in his community, he changed his plans. He started the Chinese first ever Mandarin-speaking Southern Baptist church. And now his church is growing because the Chinese people he meets all seem to want the same thing.
God has opened doors, and some Chinese people make friends with us. Now they gradually bring their friends to our group.
Many big North American cities have 100,000 or more Chinese people, but only 1 or 2 or 0 Chinese Southern Baptist churches. That's why your gifts to the Annie Armstrong Easter offering are so important. Because when you give, you're helping to start the first ever Chinese churches like this one, and helping to create first ever gospel encounters.
A lot of Chinese people came here to have a better life. There's more freedom. There's more of everything good in the United States. But real freedom, real life is in Christ.
You cannot see their faces. You cannot know their names. But you can help change their lives when you give to the Annie Armstrong Easter offering. That's why it's important for everyone to know the stories about missionaries like this one and the Chinese people they are meeting and introducing to Jesus.
When I think about what a movement looks like for us, it's really this. You know, it's packing up a truck, it's boxes, it's tape. For us, it was moving to the college town of Madison, Wisconsin.
We're super passionate about seeing young people meet Jesus and then have that change the entire trajectory of their life. So a better place to do it than here.
We are being launched into a context of 43,000 college students. When you think about leaving family, when you think about leaving friends and start a new thing, and struggling through all that, man, we gotta get there. We just have to get to the people that are gonna be shaping our culture and our country in the years to come.
We have students that have come here to help us from across the country to plant, and because they believe in the mission of God, and they believe they're a huge part of it.
Really, the engine, if you will, of church planting is college students. And if you can give them a church planting vision for the rest of their life, their perspective on life and family and job is going to be around the Great Commission.
And that vision is what drove us to uproot our lives and to move here to Madison. The crazy thing is we're not that unique. We're part of a movement. The reality is that there's hundreds of other church planters on campuses all across North America, just like us.
This is way bigger than just us, because just about in every place that there's college students, there's planters. You think about just Ohio and Iowa, Alabama, the West Coast and California. There's just people going and planting churches to reach what used to be some of the most unreached people in America. Everyone can have a collegiate reaching vision. When you give to the Annie Armstrong Easter offering, you're really giving with the hope to change the world. that this gift makes this movement possible to millions of college students around this country.
Miami is this beautiful, complex collision of cultures and stories and life. There's just no other place like it. When we moved from Atlanta here to plant the church, we didn't know what we were going to experience.
But at the same time, the promise of what God could do here was something I was like, okay, Lord, only you can do that.
From the 60s to mid-80s, Miami experienced transition spiritually, socially, economically. The church started leaving. Truth started leaving too. And that escape left a sour taste in the mouth of a lot of people in South Florida. The need for not a church, but multiple churches coming together to seek the well-being of the city, that people would fall in love with Jesus, is great. Where we are is on the east side of town, and so it's Little Haiti. It's a community in transition. There's this artistic vibe, but at the same time, you have people who are extremely poor. It makes living here beautiful, but challenging to some degree.
When we walk into our church, we're singing the same exact song in multiple languages. And the people in our church are saying, thank you for singing in that language. That's my heart's language. That's the language that I dream in. And you walk into our church, it is amazing that there's Bolivians and Peruvians and Colombians and Venezuelans sitting on the same row.
There's an international root here that you're just not going to escape. When you give to the Armstrong Easter offering, you are helping to shape South Florida with the gospel. You are literally also shaping the world, because this area doesn't just touch this area, it touches different parts of the globe. Jesus brings all of those pieces together, all of those stories, all of the people into a new family.
And to see God provide things that I didn't even know that I needed. I still am amazed that He's provided the way He has.
When people think of Minnesota, St. Paul, Minneapolis, they don't think of Africa. But there are hundreds of thousands of Africans living here. When I came to the Twin City, I met people from South Sudanese and Cameroon, Ethiopia, and Nigeria asking me, please, Pastor Philip, come and plant church among us. I planted 2 churches in Nigeria, and when we came here in 2015, we planted the church, Hope of Nation Gospel Church. I'm very grateful and thankful to the Lord for those who are giving to Annie Armstrong Easter offering, because that is what we need to start this church. But that's not where our story ends. That is just the beginning. Kemis is a refugee from South Sudan, and I'm discipling him. We were able to train him. Not a long time ago, Kemis approached me to let me know that God is calling him to go and preach in South Sudan.
We have what is called the Lost Boys of South Sudan. And myself, I was cut off from my family for 2 years. So when I came to the United States, with all the things that I went through, and I look back into myself and ask myself, what can I do to help my own people from where I came from?
I saw Kemis and I saw many people like him, Africans, that who want to be trained. So we began our Leadership Institute to train pastors so that they can go back and reach out to their people. The reason why it's important to train these people and send them back to their home countries because they know the culture and they know the language, and their friends, families, they trust them. When people give, they are not only helping to plant church here in Minnesota, but they are helping to spread the gospel all over the world.
Comerío is a beautiful place, but when I was young, I got lost in drugs and alcohol, and I come from a good family, so they decided to send me to the United States, thinking that new people, new area might help, and that's where I received Jesus Christ. I never thought that I was going to come back to Comerío, but I made a few trips to visit my family here, and I start seeing the neighborhood and the people of my neighborhood, my people, differently from all those time before, and that's how God start working in my life to, you know, give me the desire to come back to Comerío and start a church. But then everything changed. When I think about the damage that Hurricane Maria caused in Comerío, I was so heartbroken because I knew my people needed help. We didn't have any electricity and we didn't have any water. And watching clothes for us was really tough. God started putting the desire on me to do like a laundry. We share the gospel and pray with so many people at the Watcher Machine area. Since we are following Jesus, following God on this, God quickly moved us to start a church to see those people getting baptized. For me, that's exactly what God wanted to get done here in Comerío. So when people give to the Armstrong offering, I see that they are not just putting money in a place, but they are investing in people's life, in someone else's eternal life. And that means a lot.
In Salt Lake City, everybody is Mormon. Maybe 98% people is lost. Everybody talk about growing a big church. I don't want big churches, I want more churches. In the city, when everyone is Mormon, it's easy to feel alone. In West Valley City, 42% is Hispanic people. It's hard for the Hispanic people to live in the United States. The people have 2 or 3 jobs. I see the fruit for the Hispanic in this community. One example is Jose. He is a new leader in our church.
I came to the Utah from El Salvador. I found work here as a graphic designer. I thought I was coming to America just to work. I did not realize God had another plan.
Jose loves Jesus. He have a passion to see the people change it.
I never think myself as a pastor, but I had been at Luis Church. He came to me about helping start a new church in another community. That was something I never pictured myself doing. But Luis is teaching me, and now I think I'm ready.
when you see brothers going to plant new churches. It's a sacrifice, but that heart is necessary. I'm grateful for the Annie Armstrong Easter offering. It helped my life, my ministry, my family. This church is not possible if not have any Armstrong offering. I have a dream to see very soon new churches everywhere in Salt Lake City, Utah. This is our passion, this is our goal. I live for that. This is the Great Commission.
Really neat stories, don't you think? I want to take just a second to one of the things that was said about Miami. I was kind of whispering to Susie's ear because they were talking about Little Haiti. Little Haiti is considered to be one of the most dangerous pieces of real estate in all of the United States. It has been said that if you are not Haitian or they don't think you belong there, you do not walk the streets of Little Haiti at night. So to see missionaries coming from different parts of the country to minister in places like Little Haiti, that is extremely dangerous in our own state. It is a very dark place. A lot of voodoo, a lot of white magic and black magic is done there. A lot of violence. The gun violence in Little Haiti is tremendous. But Miami is so interesting in the dynamic, and what we see in South Florida particularly, that you don't see up here is something that they mentioned in that video. They talked about that the churches have to come together. One of the battles we have up here is the turf war. In 20 years of ministry, I've seen it. You know, this is my church, this is my church, this is my community. Don't reach my community, you know, and all these kinds of things. Down there, they've come to the realization that if the churches don't all work together, they don't reach people. Because the area down there is so diverse that everybody brings something to the plate. Just like that one church he was talking about, he says on the one pew you have Peruvians, Bolivians, you have Haitians, you have maybe Puerto Ricans on one bench. And so everybody has to collectively come together. And when you see that happen, like we see that happen at State Board of Mission meetings, they come together and they're like networks. And that's one of the reasons why over this last year, one of the bylaws that we have rewritten as a state convention is to not only talk about, you know, we have like the Swanee Baptist Association, we've got Middle Florida Baptist Association, not get away from associations, but also look at associations as well as networks. Because we see more networking happening down in South Florida than we do up here. Up here, we like our distinct little lines of turf. But down there, they have had to blend. Because if they don't, people are not going to get reached. And one of the things that they said that really kind of intrigued me is that when in the 60s through the 80s, whenever the culture began to shift down there, what did the church do? Left. Wow. Well, you can imagine, if you had believers down there, which of course there were, and their church left because it couldn't take the change or the heat, whatever it was, because all of a sudden church wasn't like it always used to be, it left. We need to take note of that. Because I will tell you this, within the next 20 years, this is not going to look like it does right now. So, and some of you are like, well, that don't matter, I probably won't be here anyway. Well, let me tell you, you don't know, you know what Lord may say. The Lord may keep you 120 years. But I will tell you this, the last thing we need to do is bolt when the community changes. So I believe this is a way of God telling us, hey, this has already happened in one part of your state. The northern part is not exempt from it. Okay? So we got a lot of praying to do about our folks across the mission board. These folks are in some very, very difficult areas. Puerto Rico is another very difficult area. When we were down at St. Kitts and St. Martin on our cruise this last time, and we typically always kind of get in a conversation with our tour guide or a bus driver or somebody about faith, you know, about Jesus, about Christianity. We were in St. Kitts, wasn't I think when he says we just don't even go to church here. I was blown away. There's like one church, and the bus driver says, well, most people just don't go to church in St. Kitts. My goodness. But what great news is, St. Kitts has now become part of the Florida Baptist Convention. So now, through North American mission money, guess what? We're sending missionaries to St. Kitts. St. Kitts, St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. Martin, all those islands that have not done church in years, or some of them a very Catholic model of church, and they don't understand grace and salvation exclusively through Jesus Christ, many of them. We are now able to pour missionaries into those regions of the world through the state of Florida. So that's pretty cool. So having these extra monies for the North American Mission Board is seriously going to help Florida reach not only our own state, but beyond. So I'm excited about what's happening. So I encourage you again, pray as how God would have you give an offering. You say, preacher, I have $5. Give $5. Give $5. It's not about how much you give, it's if you give, right? Because I guarantee you, God will take that widow's mite and he will bless it tremendously. Amen. So let's give so that we may also send hope. Amen. All right, if everyone would stand.